All right, we are live. Great, okay. All right, I think we're live. Hey everyone, happy Sunday. Welcome to the session and thank you so much for joining me in the session. As always, I am honored to be with you here in our 36th session of Live Sacred Space in this time of sensitivity and uncertainty, and I look forward to sharing this time with you in our sacred space today. So what we're going to do today is we'll hew to form. We'll set sacred space. We'll do our overall kind of topic talk, and today the topic will be another fairy tale based topic, which I was a little bit hesitant about, but Gary pushed me on, so we're going to do this, and we'll have a little exercise, and then we'll close sacred space. Okay, so to open sacred space, and welcome to everyone who may be new. Let me just make sure our Facebook is working. Yeah. And then our crowdcast is working. So I'll go ahead and start the process of setting our sacred space by saying that what we intend to do here together is to create a space for the span of about an hour or two on this Sunday morning. A space which is devoid of fear, threat, and control, in order for us to open to higher guidance from within our own selves, however we define that. It could be intuition, it could be the muse, it could be just imagination, whatever, right? But the point is to have a safe sanctuary space for us all to be able to relax and surrender with no danger or threat, so that we can partake of the emotional nourishment and the spiritual nourishment that comes pretty much only from being in sacred space together as a group. And in opening sacred space today, I will propose, as I do every week, that we all follow the principles, the 4 principles of proceeding in sacred space. Number 1, confidentiality. Standard Vegas rules. What happens in sacred space stays in sacred space. Now that's more of a rule for in-person gatherings. And for online, since the session is open to the public, the replay will be open to the public. A bunch of you are watching, on Facebook. The way we do confidentiality is via anonymization. So if you would like to be anonymous when you're interacting, you don't have to be anonymous while you're interacting. You don't have to interact. But if you would like to be anonymous, you would come into the crowdcast stream. There should be a link on there from the Facebook post as well. And then once you're in crowdcast, you go into edit profile, and then you just change your username to Harry Potter, Mickey Mouse, whatever you'd like, to be anonymous, and then come back and chat and ask questions from there. So that's number 1, confidentiality, in this case, via anonymization. Number 2 is the idea and the principle that in sacred space, there is no actions we take where there's any threat or controlling. There's no fixing, there's no tough love, there's no intervening for your own good. There's nothing necessarily wrong with any of those things, but because they are of the nature of control and threat, right? Which is, you're in pain, I'm here to help you for your own good, but you better do this or else, right, you won't get your pain relief. And that is a threat. It's not necessarily a bad threat, but it is a threat. All of those are more of the provenance of the realm of the profane. And there's nothing wrong with that. But there's certain things you can do. There's certain kinds of nourishment you can only partake of when you are in sacred space. So without saying anything's good or bad, we are choosing to be in sacred space in order to do those things. And so one of the principles is confidentiality. The other is just no threat, no controlling, no fixing, no tough love. We hold space here for each other to be however we happen to find ourselves to be, right? To be afraid, to be anxious, to be happy and relaxed, to be okay with how we are, or to be how we are and then to not be okay with how we are, and just we allow ourselves to be however we are, and just to hold space for that. Number 3 is no commerce. So as a corollary to the one above, nothing may be sold in sacred space. I can't sell you anything, or even recommended or suggested. So if there's a great book I can recommend, and I don't make any money off it and I recommend it, the preference is to not make those recommendations, because anything I recommend for you is its own kind of well-intentioned, right, attempt at intervening and controlling, right, and threatening in a well-intentioned way. Here's this book, and the implied threat is if you don't read the book, you may miss out. Okay. So no recommendations, nothing may be sold, nothing may be suggested. Again, we're here for your energy, not for the things you bring. We're here for what you are, not for what you do or provide. And the 4th principle is, of course, no expectation of participation. So there's no pressure to do anything. Again, the nourishment comes from your held space and our collective presence and attention. Not whether you chat, not whether you ask a question. You don't need to do any of that. You don't even need to stay for the whole thing. You can come and go as you please. You can be distracted listening to me and us in the background and be on your phone. That's all okay. Whatever you need to do, you just go ahead and do it. And the whole point is no one's going to mess with you, right? This is a space where no one will mess with you. And we intentionally create that so that we can do the things we do and be the way we are when we're in a space, very rare in this world, where we know, right, that no one will mess with us. Okay. So all of us together will tend to amplify this sacred space effect. Of course, you can do it on your own, as we've said in the introductory video and many of our previous sessions. But when you're in sacred space in a group, that effect tends to be amplified. So that's it. So this is what I propose. And if you are not okay with that, we will, that's totally okay. There's no fear, threat, or control to get you to stay in sacred space either. We'll catch up with you later in profane space. We'll still hang out. We'll still be friends. No worries at all. But if you don't want to be in sacred space, now would be the time to make your selection, because we're about to move into the space together. So if you're not okay with it, we will give you a moment to withdraw from the group, and we'll catch up with you later. And I'll take a pause here just to give you time to make your selection. Okay. And for now, for the rest of us, we will now move forward together into sacred space. And as we enter into sacred space, I'll just remind of the 4 principles we're following: confidentiality, anonymization, no fear, threat, or control, no commerce, no recommendations, and no expectation of participation. Welcome back to sacred space. One of the best parts of my week. All right, so what do we have on deck here? Oops, so we're getting some notes on the sound. So let me try and check and see what's going on. I think I found the problem. How's that? I just switched back to this microphone. Does that sound better? Anyone? I'm going to assume the sound is better. Okay, great. Thank you. Sorry, I switched the Wi-Fi and it went from my AirPod to this. Okay, sorry about that. But hopefully the sound will only impact the introduction, which a lot of you old timers skip now anyway. I've heard a rumor, little bird told me. And that's okay, that's okay. No expectation of participation, right? Okay, all right. So let's talk about our topic for today. So our topic for today is how we avoid transformation with cleverness. So this week when I was on my call, weekly fairy tale brainstorm call with Gowrie, she brought a story that was interesting, and I was like, well, it kind of talks about these themes, but I don't know if that's really relevant for this group. And she kept egging me on, so we ended up sort of doing it. And the idea here is that there is this classic theme of healing and bliss, which is how we tend to use cleverness and intellect and sort of sleight of hand, right? In order to avoid transformation, okay? And in so doing, we end up prolonging the circumambulation of our healing journey. We end up making the journey take longer than it otherwise theoretically might have taken. And as we go through this, I want to emphasize that the fact that we avoid transformation with cleverness is part of the journey, right? It's part of the journey. In other words, when we go through this story and we go through, how we interpret and read the story, I want to sort of give you this pro tip, which is, a theme that we've covered several sessions ago, which is when you read a story as a symbol versus allegory, right? So when you read it as allegory, you're reading it and it's like, oh, you dunderhead, you better do it this way, not that way. Otherwise, you won't get your dessert tonight, right? So this, or else, this threat. So this allegory, the moral of the story is, be a good person, whatever. Whereas when you read it as symbol, it's saying, no, we're not trying to cattle prod you into doing anything. We're just showing you the symbol as it is, right? When I show you the illustrated life cycle of the oak tree, and there's an acorn phase, and then it turns into an oak shoot, and then there's an oak tree, and then it rains down acorns again. I'm not trying to get you to move along and go faster as an acorn. I'm just showing you a state of affairs that is so, right? Often, whether you're ready for it or not. And so here, at a meta level, as we go through the story, you may be tempted to say, well, I better just like drop my cleverness and just be dumb and go forward. And that's fine if you want to, but just, still no fear, threat, or control. No fear, threat, or control, right? I'm not telling you to stop being clever, okay, when we go through this. And so as we go through, let's just dive in. It's a Welsh fairy tale, folk tale. So I figured we just invite Gary back up and then let her tell the story and then let the golden thread kind of take us from there. So Gary, if you're there, can come on screen.
Hey, Artie. Hi,
hello.
Yeah, hi.
Oh, you're on the other side of the screen today. Look at that.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not going to mess with the tech anymore. We're just going to let sleeping dogs along here.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. Nice to be here on Sunday.
Thank you again. Thank you again for coming.
Right.
All right. So do you want to tell us about the story, how you came to it, or do you want to just dive right in? Start wherever you would like to.
Yeah, it's a kind of a funny way that the story came to me is, I keep time aside to kind of read up stories and do a bit of research for what we do on Sacred Sundays. And then there is this time off in the evenings where I watch TV with my mum, and I was watching the show on Netflix. It's a detective show. The last place I would kind of expect to find a folk tale for Sacred Sunday. And I started watching this. It's a Welsh show. And the first thing that comes in the first episode is a legend about a real place in Wales called the Devil's Bridge. Mm. And just the name caught my attention because, we've done fairy tale readings of the devil quite a bit.
We've been talking about the devil. The devil has been coming up.
Yeah. So we've come across the devil in our readings. And so I was fascinated by the name itself. And even then I wasn't expecting for a story around it to come up. But then it so happens that a character in the story, in the show, actually tells another character the legend behind the name as to why it's called Devil's Bridge. And it's a real folktale. And I was looking at it, I was thinking, no way. I was actually telling my muse, you're not giving me a story now. I'm supposed to be watching TV, right? This is not happening. And then I looked it up, whether it was just a made up story by, the show writer,
the screenwriters, yeah,
something like that, or was it a real story? It turned out it was real. It's a real legend and a real place. So yes, and I've kind of figured out that this Devil's Bridge is found. I mean, this place, the name of this place is found in many, many places across Europe. I mean, I think in Germany, in Italy, there's quite a lot of places called Devil's Bridge. So it's fascinating that we have real places named after something like a folk tale that we discuss in Sacred Sundays. So that.
What's interesting to me is that because it's throughout, well, let's just say Europe, you can say that, especially in the mode that we've been in, talking about the mythopoetics of everything, is that this argues for the case that the Devil's Bridge is an actual archetype, right, in the consciousness of Western culture, Western tradition, Western society.
Right. Yeah.
Or just like Kali, you can say obviously is an archetype of Hindu, Indian tradition. Here, it's like you see it so many places. It's there. It's an archetype. It's not pushed to the front and center, like maybe the Christ is, or the sort of messianic kind of archetypal figure is. But it's there. It's definitely there.
Yeah, and it's fascinating, I think, because it's the first time we're discussing a place as an archetype in our discussions. We've had these people, characters, names as archetypes, of places in themselves as archetypes is just, I think, a huge thing to explore in itself, which is amazing that we've come to that.
Okay, good.
Okay,
do you want to do it? Are we ready?
Yeah, so I'll start the story, and many people might already be familiar with it. If you've lived in Wales or England and you know the place, you might already know it. But yeah, this is for everyone else who hasn't heard of it. So
I'll go to the background. I'll see you in a bit.
Right. Okay, I'll see you. So there's this story about the Devil's Bridge, which this particular Devil's Bridge is in Wales. And it starts with, and even as the story starts, there is the River Mynach, which flows in Wales. And the story starts with an old woman called Megan, who was standing by the river. And as she stood there, she was feeling very sorry for herself. She was feeling sad. And that's because the river was in flood. And at this point, the river flows down, through the woods. And it falls into kind of a waterfall flowing, say, about 300 feet. And the waterfall is in like 5 steps. And I was looking at pictures on the internet. This is really fascinating. It's such a beautiful waterfall in thick woods, and it flows down 5 steps with a huge speed and falls into a great circular pit-like place before it starts flowing out as a river. And that the large circular pit looks like a cauldron because the water falling just bubbles around, froths, and then flows into a river. And that's what was happening right now as Megan stood right next to it, and she's looking at the cauldron as the water boiled and hissed and bubbled, and it looked as though the cauldron was troubled by some spirit, some evil spirit. And from this cauldron, the river rushed out, and it went into a narrow, deep ravine. And the story says, if Megan had the time or an eye for, the beauty of nature, she would have been, awed by the whole thing. She would have been happy and not sad. But at this time, she didn't care for any of these things because her one and only cow was on the wrong side of the ravine. And she was thinking, and all her thoughts were just centered on how to get this cow back. And while the cow was grazing, it was eating the green grass on the other side. It was kind of carelessly, grazing around, absolutely not bothered that it was so far away from home and how to get back home. But Megan was just sort of distraught and worried, thinking about this. And she had no one else to talk to. So she talked to herself and she said, oh dear, what am I going to do? And then there was a voice behind her, which kind of softly asked her, what is the matter, Megan? And she turned around and she looked at a man who wore a cowl like a monk. And he had a rosary at his belt. And she didn't hear him coming. But that could be because, the water was just so noisy and there was so much sound of the water itself. So she may have not heard his footsteps. But in any case, because she was troubled about her cow, she told the stranger what happened. She said, there's my only cow. It's the sole support of my old age. And it's on the other side of the river. And I don't know how to get her back again. And the monk said, well, don't you worry about that. I'll get her back for you. And Megan said, how are you going to do that? And the stranger replied, well, it's one of my kind of hobbies, or amusement to build bridges. And if you like, I'll build a bridge across this ravine for you. And the old woman said, oh, well, that would be really helpful, but, it's going to cost you to build a bridge, I'm sure, and you'd like some kind of payment, but I don't know how to pay you. I'm really poor and I have no money to spare. I don't know what to pay. And so the monk said, well, I'm very easily contented, so I'm not really looking for a lot of money or anything like that. Just let me have, the first living thing that crosses the bridge after I've finished it, and that payment should be enough. So Megan agreed to this. She thought, okay, that sounds reasonable. And then the monk told her to go back to her cottage. And he said, you wait there and I'll call for you when I'm done. Now, Megan was walking back and she wasn't such a fool as she looked. So she observed certain things about this monk. And she noticed that this very kind and very obliging, stranger had something odd about his foot. And she kind of suspected that his knees were, facing backwards rather than in front. So she thought and thought and thought while she was waiting at home about what she should do next. And then this monk, called her and told her that the bridge is ready, right? So by then she had thought so much that, her head was almost aching, but she came upon a plan and she said, okay, so this is what I'm going to do. She had a faithful dog with her and she made the dog follow her, and she took a loaf of bread under her shawl and she went to the riverside. And the monk said, well, there's a bridge for you. It was a fine bridge that, that just spanned across the ravine onto the other side. And it looked like something anybody should be really proud of. But Megan said, well, okay, that's a bridge, but I'm not sure it's strong. And the monk said, what do you mean strong? Of course it's strong. And then she said, okay, will it hold the weight of this loaf? And she brought the bread loaf out from under her shawl. And he said, what are you even talking about? Hold the weight of this loaf? You can throw it on and see. So Megan then took the loaf out and she threw it onto the bridge. And her dog, who was right next to her, just ran after it and crossed the bridge trying to catch the bread. And then Megan said, okay, so that will do. And by the way, my little dog is the first living thing to cross the bridge. So you're welcome to have him. And thank you for your trouble. And the stranger was very annoyed. And he said, that silly dog is of no use to me. And he just disappeared, it vanished into space. And then from the smell of brimstone that he left behind him, Megan then knew that she had just outwitted the devil. So, and that's how the Devil's Bridge came to be. Artie, do you want to? Yeah, hi.
Good job, good job. Good story, good
Right.
story. So thank you for reading that story again. So I'll start with my first usual question. Where do you enter into that story?
Well, it was just such a complete different take on what we were reading about the devil or any other kind of interaction before. One of the first things that sprung up for me was, we've been talking about good faith in all of the readings that we've done before, about how when you talk to any of the chthonic elements within you, you act in good faith, and they act in good faith with you. And I found that even though this was clever and all of that, it just that the good faith part was completely missing. And I wondered why. Why would you outwit the devil? Why would you trick the devil when kind of the devil came to help you? Right. So what is the suspicion here? Why is she suspicious of the devil? Why is she wary of the devil? Right. So that's kind of the story didn't tell that. It just kind of gives the mindset of the old woman as to how she looks at the stranger, but doesn't say why she is wary. Right. So that kind of intrigued me as well. And the second thing was that normally, this is what I'm used to in fairy tales that I've read or readings that we've done, is all of this outwitting and trickery and cleverness and smartness. These are normally things that we come across in fairy tales in masculine, inner masculine, going out on a quest or trying to get something. Like in the previous story, we've found this hunter who tries to who tricks the two men in the forest and takes their cap and shoes, right? Or he outwits. There's someone else. There's a young man who outwits the sorcerer, who tricks the sorcerer into something. It's kind of a theme, a motif that I've noticed where you have this inner masculine who's out on a quest and needs to use his wits to kind of win this particular thing. So I found it very strange and very different, fascinating that in this story there's an old woman who I think it's kind of a version of a crone, right?
Right, for sure.
Yeah, so there is that very new dynamic that I found that intrigued me, and I didn't know what to think of it, but it was fascinating. So that's what stood out for me in the story.
I love that. Yeah, this story for me was super powerful because right from the get-go, it swirls all the elements together.
Yeah.
Right. The water, the cauldron, the symbol of a bridge is very powerful, which we'll get to, right? But also it's the crone and the devil, right? There is no sort of like the patriarch is not to be seen. There's not even like an inner masculine kind of hero or whatever. There's certainly no inner masculine, inner feminine reconciliation or union, right? There's no princess and prince getting married in the end. It's a very interesting sort of story dynamic. So yeah, should I go through some of my notes here and
Yeah.
So for those of you who may be new, right? There've been like 35 sessions before this at this point. But just to give the quick kind of touchstone on how we do these fairy tale readings, myth readings when we do them, is that we read them as if they are dreams. And the idea when you read a dream, at least the way we do it, at Preside is that when you read a dream, you regard every major actor in the dream as a symbol of a different part of your own inner self. Right, so a dream is kind of a diorama of a subset of actors in your own interior world. And the way you read a dream, or a myth or a fairy tale in this case, is you hit the play button, you let the video unwind and roll forward, and you see who shows up and you see who's doing what to whom, and then you kind of, symbolically or allegorically, your choice, right? You kind of intuit and kind of interpret what may be going on, right? What may be going on. And so for this, we definitely read the story as a dream. But we also read, the place, the physical cauldron that's there, right, at the Devil's Bridge in Wales. And, you can tend to read, even the fact that you picked up the story when you were watching Netflix at this particular point in our lives, at this particular point in the pandemic, in world affairs, in your personal life, in my personal life, in the personal lives of all the people who happen to be randomly watching, right? Who stumbled across this video through a friend sending it to them, or who have been watching, for the past 7 or 8 months, right, every week. And the point is, at this larger zoomed out level of reading things mythopoetically as dreams, is that you can read everything. You don't have to, but you can read everything if you wish, and as much as you want to, as a dream, with this lens of like, is this a reflection of something going on within me? And if so, what is it? And you say, well, the fact that you stumbled across this story when you were watching Netflix, well, that doesn't count. It's totally random, right? But the point is, you can say that about anything. I mean, we're talking about reading dreams, for crying out loud, right? You can say the dreams were random. It's like, that wasn't anything meaningful. It's just indigestion from the chili I ate last night, right? Or the spicy food. And so you have a choice here, right? Which is, how much of your world and your experience do you read mythopoetically for clues? It can be 0, or it can be 100%, or it can be somewhere in between, or it can vary depending on your situation and level of comfort. Yeah. It reminds me of that thing that, hey, Garrett, someone's having trouble with the sound, so maybe you could text them and suggest a refresh or something. But the idea here is that it reminds me of that quote by Einstein, right? Which is something to the effect of, I'm gonna garble it, I'm sure, but you can act and act as if and live as if nothing in life is a miracle, or everything in life is a miracle, but it's hard to do it halfway, right? So that's your choice. Either everything in life is a miracle or nothing in life is a miracle. And it's pretty, I think most people would agree that it's definitely not the fact that nothing in life is a miracle. And the rest, you can kind of make your own choices from there. Okay, so if we dive into some of these symbols here, right, if that makes sense. Right from the get-go, right, we're in this landscape. We have this water coming down from this high cliff, splashing down into a cauldron. And I'll just touch on some of these really quickly without going in too deeply. But when you see water in a dream, it tends to be a symbol of insight. Right, the water comes, refreshes, clears things out. It's basically a symbol of insight. It can be emotion as well, but it's, in my experience, the 8,000 dreams I've read in the past 3 or 4 years, insight is my first kind of go-to. So this insight coming down and then hitting this cauldron, and apparently in the actual Devil's Bridge in Wales, it is a cauldron. You can see pictures of it if you just Google it. And it hits and it actually swirls and bubbles before coming out in the form of the rest of the river, right? And so a cauldron, as you may remember from past sessions, represents the womb or the container of transformation, right? So there is this transformation of the inbound water, the insight. There's a transformation of insight. What is the insight? It's not clear yet, right? But there's something going on. A cauldron is like an instant pot or a pressure cooker. It's a container for pressure and containment. Just like your home or apartment may be the cauldron during the pandemic, where you're being subject to pressure and containment, right? And many of us all around the world have been experiencing different forms and different degrees of transformation during this pandemic crisis. So the cauldron represents transformation of the insight. So we know whatever is coming out of the cauldron in the form of the river reaching the woman is going to be potent, right? There's something powerful that is streaming out in river form now. And this transformed insight is the thing that cuts her off from her cow. And now a cow in dream symbolism, it's feminine, obviously, but it's also, it's an animal. So it's your body, inner feminine. It's your body, inner feminine. So you're embodied inner feminine. The two major sort of functions or tasks of the inner feminine, and we all have inner feminine and inner masculine, regardless of our sort of declared gender, right? The two functions of the inner feminine are nurturing / nourishment, so the cow, obviously, and also vision, right? So here it's like, well, it's just this dumb cow, it's just this dumb animal. What's the big deal? Well, it is across the ravine now. Right? The transformed insight has basically estranged you or made you aware of the estrangement between you and the cow. When she woke up one morning and discovered the state of affairs. So the cow is nourishment, but the withdrawal of the nourishment is what leads you to vision, because then she gets, kind of mixed up in this whole affair of the story, right? Which then yields its own insight. So she is cut off from this part of herself. She is, in sort of modern spiritual wellness terms, disembodied, cut off from her body. Okay, that's like right at the beginning of the story. And then the devil shows up, just like in the Frog King, the Frog King, Frog Princess story that is kind of our touchstone archetypal benchmark, right, for the classic fairy tale. And for those of you who are interested, I mean, Gary, maybe you can put the link to the SoundCloud of that. Actually, let me see if I can. Yeah, I've got it here. I'll dump that in the crowdcast and you can put it in Facebook. All right. And so the devil shows up just like the frog and says, he doesn't say to the princess, as the frog says to the princess, "What's the matter, little girl?" And she's lost her golden ball down the well of insight. And here, the crone has lost her cow, her embodiment, across the river of this insight, whatever it is, right? Coming out of the cauldron, the cauldron and the crone, right? The witch and the cauldron are two sides of the same coin. So it's the cauldron that embodies. It's not like the patriarch or Yahweh or knight in shining armor coming in and doing this. This is an internal process to her. Okay. And he says, "What's the matter?" And she says, "Well, I can't reach my cow." And they make a deal. They make a deal. And what's interesting here is, she suspects it's the devil, right? She suspects it's the devil. It's this masculine force in the system, very powerful, can just throw bridges on command. Okay, and we traditionally associate the devil with body and bodily desires, right? The cow on the other side, right? I'm cut off from my bodily desires. And the devil force, the devil force within us offers to reconnect us, right, with our bodies, which typically in the Christian tradition is a no-no, right? We need to flagellate our bodies, we need to deny our bodies, we can't eat too much, we can't sex too much, we can't do anything too much. And the devil's obviously, persona non grata, right, in all this. So she suspects it's him. But very notably, she doesn't say anything, right? So the Vishuddha chakra from the 7 chakra talk, she doesn't speak her truth to him or to herself,
right? And yet she continues to deal with him, right? If there's all this hullabaloo about the devil is so bad, why are you continuing to deal with him? Right? Just walk away. Forget your cow. But yet she continues to deal with him, even though she does not speak the truth. She says, well, what's wrong with your foot? Obviously, it's a cloven hoof, right? And the knees are pointed back, so he's like a satyr, right? He's basically this devil with horns and the sort of goat feet legs or whatever. So very blatant, very obvious. She sees it, and she's an old woman. She's not stupid, right? So she gets this, and yet she suppresses that instinct. And anytime in one of these stories you have a figure like the crone, which is the embodiment, ideally, of feminine wisdom, right? Inner feminine elder wisdom, not speaking her truth and suppressing her own instinct, you know there's something wrong with the story, right? Something has been doctored or gerrymandered in the wrong way here, which we'll explore in just a moment here. So she doesn't say anything. She continues to deal with him. And in the end, she tricks him with the bread and offers him the dog, which is an inner masculine animal. So he is the masculine counterpart of the cow. The cow is the inner feminine embodiment, and the dog is inner masculine embodiment. And he doesn't want the dog. Well, he said, I want the first living thing, the soul of the first living thing that comes across. Why wouldn't he want the dog? The reason he doesn't want the dog is because the devil here personified, he is the inner masculine embodiment, right? He's trying to help you stitch back together. That's his job. And she tricks him in the end by giving him something that's no good to him. But when I read the actual text, he didn't even seem that angry. He wasn't like, well, I'm gonna sort of, and then realize that he reads his contract and he realizes he can't actually do that. It's not like that at all. I think the text says, oh, tut tut, that's no good to me, and then he just leaves. So to me, it's more this feeling of like, okay, whatever. Clearly you're not getting this. I'm gonna go leave you to your bridge, enjoy, and circumambulation. I'll come back again and ring your doorbell and give you another shot later. Okay. And the question is, shot at what? Give you another shot at what? So he doesn't want the inner masculine. He wants integration with the inner feminine, either Megan or the cow. So there's this longing for integration. And in an effort to do this, he literally builds a bridge. It's meaningful to me that the symbol, the core symbol of this whole thing is a bridge, right? It's not a pot of gold. It's not a magic potion that like heals your wounds or anything. It's a bridge, a thing that connects and links one realm with another, which will be significant when we dive into this in just a few minutes here as well. So he literally builds a bridge to connect and bridge realms. And as the inner masculine, one of the key jobs of the inner masculine is manifestation, right? Going out into the real world, the concrete world, and getting things done, right? Moving mountains, building bridges, et cetera, et cetera. So he does his job and he's manifesting. And what he wants participation. He wants reintegration. He wants back from exile, right, is what he wants. And she outwits him, not with a stone, not with a dog treat or a bone. It could have been anything. She literally outwits him with a loaf of bread, which to me is evocative of the nourishment we get from Christianity. Like, give us this day our daily bread, right? So it is the daily bread of Christianity that she uses to outwit the devil. So, haha, fantastic, that's great. And that's typically how the story is read, right? It's read allegorically. So it's like when you see the devil, which makes no sense. Like, when do you see the devil? When you see the devil, outwit him with a loaf of bread. And it's like, okay, I don't really know what that does for me in my life every day, but I guess I'll just try to be good and try to do the right thing and try to get into heaven and not get into hell, which doesn't speak to my daily life of food and pleasure and worry and, kids and wars and famine and all of that. it's very, very distanced, right? It's allegorical rules that are imposed on this like bubbling, cauldron-like, desirous, heavy breathing, deeply loving, gushy, right, messy reality. So in the end, she has outwitted him at one level. So good on you, that's good. But at another level, and in past stories, we've done this in the past couple of months. If you look at the arc of the story before and after, she is back with her cow, although the story doesn't actually show her walking across. So she's still not technically back together with her cow. She has the bridge that's been provided, but he leaves and the story doesn't finish, right? So it's not quite complete. But in addition to that, so she has nominal access to her cow again. But there is no emerging masculine, there is no emerging feminine. So there's no little boy and little girl. There's no marriage, there's no wedding, there's no prince and princess coming together, there's no inner masculine and feminine coming together. There's no treasure, there's nothing. And so even in Hansel and Gretel, with both an evil stepmother and an evil witch, at the end, you had Gretel, the emerging inner feminine, right, crossing the finish line and making everything better. And here, there's no Gretel, right, which kind of should tell you something. And the only artifact that's left over from this whole hullabaloo, from this transformation, is this bridge, right, which ironically carries on this hypocrisy. And the hypocrisy is that the devil is still exiled. We've outsmarted him. We have acted not in good faith with the devil. And yet, we still continue to use his bridge, which is the height of hypocrisy. Right? We still rely on the devil and his gifts, but we pretend we don't know him. Right? It's almost like the way we treat money in a lot of people and a lot of sort of especially middle-class value systems, right? You use money, you rely on it, you need it, but you pretend you don't need it, and you kind of look the other way when you pass it on the street, right? And there are, symbolically, there are many, many parts of our own inner self, like devil, money, a body, and in many cases, where we use it and we rely on it because we do need it. But we do not act in good faith with these parts of ourselves. We do not act in good faith. And as a result of this lack of good faith, all we have left is his bridge. We continue to use the bridge. It's actually, the bridge is still, it's a 3-level bridge. It's since the 1700s. It's been rebuilt 3 times. So in Wales, you can go and visit this bridge even today. And so it's like saying the body is bad, pleasure and desire is bad. So I'm like, well, if the body is bad, then don't eat or drink anything. Don't go to the bathroom. Don't enjoy a sunset, because even a sunset you're enjoying with your eyes, which are of the body. And yet we do all these things. And yet, like, piss on our bodies. We say our body's bad. So it's the same here. The devil is bad, it's so bad, but it's still somehow okay to use the bridge. And not just in this single Welsh example. In Italy and all over Europe, there are literally, we don't even change the name. We still call them devil's bridges, and we still use them, right? So in this story, there is no reconciliation between the masculine and feminine. There is no reconciliation between the chthonic world, the devil world, and the heroic world, the world of light. And just to touch on this a little bit more, heroic, right, versus chthonic. Chthonic is the underworld, the dark world, where the rats and owls and earthworms and creepy crawlies are. Heroic is more the solar world, the world of the light, the eagles, Apollo, the golden child, the one like raining arrows on everyone, or thunderbolts or lightning bolts. And ideally, there is a bridge between these realms. And the devil is the one trying to throw bridges, and we are not acting in good faith. So the heroic is all about me, my journey, my victories, my personal development, right? Advancing my spiritual, getting to the level of the next chakra until I reach the very top. Chthonic is the realm of grief and the soul and the body, right? Where you're not trying to attain anything anymore. You're just sitting in what you are, which is your body, but then, the whole world as well. So in other words, if you look at the full arc of the story, she was with the cow in the beginning, she's back with the cow now, so she's back to par, but there's been no development. Right? Because typically in these stories, it starts here, it goes down, and then it ends up higher than you were before. Here, right, you go down and you come back up to the same level, but there's no development. There is no upside to the story. Right? You've avoided loss, but you have not had any gain. And the reason is, if you dig into it a bit, is that first touch on the ball, there's failure on both sides. Neither side speaks their truth. The devil could have asked her what he wanted, could have just said what I want, right? Like the frog and the Frog King, he says what I want. Like the soldier in Neverwash, he says what I want. He's like, look, I'll make a deal with you, but I need to have whatever I want for the next 15 years. Don't hold anything back. I want all the ego power. I want all the gold. I want everything. And in return, I'll do this Neverwash thing. And the devil in that story says, yeah, all right. And they become very close, right? They help each other out. And it all works out perfectly, beautifully. Okay. And on the old woman, the crone side, the crone could have called the devil out when she recognized him. She's like, hey, I see those hoofs. I see your knees pointed backward instead of forward. I smell a little, what is that? What essential oil is that? Is that fire and brimstone in the diffuser you have over there? I'm smelling something. I think you're the devil. She could have said that, and he would have put back his cowl and said, all right, man, you got me. But here we are still. Look, I can help you with this bridge, but here's what I want. And they could have bargained out in the open in good faith. Okay. It is the overlay. And in previous stories we've done in the series, we've seen examples where when you bargain, even with the devil in good faith, everything works out okay. Okay. Here, everything doesn't work out okay. And the first thing that kind of spoils everything is this overlay of cunning. Cunning, in other words, not speaking your truth, not saying truthfully what you see in front of you, within you, because the devil is a force within you. The crone is a force within you. And these forces are not dealing straightly with each other. This overlay of cunning is the thing that messes everything up in the first place. Oh, I feel bad. I'm anxious. And instead of asking myself, what are those hoofs? What are those knees? Why am I anxious? Why am I anxious? Why can't I sleep at night? Right? Why am I afraid in certain social situations and I don't want to go out? Why? Instead of asking those questions, instead of doing that, I ask the more cunning question, which is, what pill can I take? What spiritual practice can I do to stuff this anxiety down and make it go away instead of bringing it up and talking to it directly, right? Cunning is the thing that messes everything up. What meditation technique, and I would say trick or gimmick, right, can you give me? Can I appropriate from ancient Hindu culture or ancient Taoist or Chinese culture to use as a tranquilizer dart, right? To shut my body up because it keeps me up at 3 a.m, right? What can I take from these practices to literally estrange myself from my body and from the world? And I think the transformation of the insight here, of the thing coming down from the waterfalls and through, is that to me, cunning gets you nowhere. Cunning gets you nowhere. It just cuts you off from your own body, from your own self, and outwits your own devil, puts him back into exile. You got his bridge, congratulations, but you don't even cross the bridge in the story, at least. The good news is, right, so at the end of the story, the devil's gone, and the dog and the bread and the cow are all on the other side of the bridge, and the crone is still on this side. I mean, she can cross, but the story doesn't show her crossing. Like the credits start rolling before you actually see it. So it's like, I mean, obviously we can, just assume that it all happened in the end. But if I were the filmmaker, I would do a close-up of the crone's face to see if she's actually smiling or not. Is she happy? Or is she like, okay, I guess I did what I was supposed to do, but I don't know how I feel about this, right? The good news is that all these parts of your own inner world love you without condition. They love you without condition. And you're like, well, why do they love you without condition? I don't deserve it. I'm like cheating the devil. I'm like mistreating all these parts of me. I'm mistreating my body, and it still helps me wake up every morning and go to work and do all these things that it doesn't agree with, but it's still supporting me. Why does it support me? Why does it love me without condition? And the answer is, it loves you without condition because it loves you without condition. That's what unconditional love means. There is no reason, right? It loves you for no good reason, and yet the love does not stop or go away. And one of the other secrets here is that you love all these parts of you without condition either. It's just terrifying to admit that sometimes. But I digress. Okay. So the good news is that the devil even loves you without condition. And he's like, tut, tut, this is no good for me. And he leaves. It's like, okay, this was another failed try. I'll leave circumambulation in the labyrinth. I'll leave and come back around another time and see if we can try again. The force of the river, the transformed insight, forced Megan into an encounter with transformation, brought her face to face with the devil right at the cusp of transformation, right? She's there bargaining with the devil. He, in good faith, comes through with his part of the plan. He throws the bridge. And he asked you, not incredibly clearly, but he didn't deceive you. He said, I want the first living thing that goes across. He could have also said, I hope it's you, because I will bring you down into the underworld with me, and we will go now into grief. Because when you go down with the devil, we know, we've had 3 or 4 stories now. What does it mean when you go down with the devil? It means you go down into grief and further cauldron transformation. What his intention is foreshadowed by the cauldron at the bottom of the falls. So he didn't lay it out completely in black and white, but he wasn't deceiving either. Right? He wasn't like, no, the bridge is free. And then once you cross, it's like, aha. Right? It's not like this complete sort of malicious deception. So all this stuff brings her face to face with transformation, right on the cusp of going down with the devil into grief. And she has outwitted it, escaped grief, escaped transformation through her cunning. She goes back to her hut, and the story says, thinking all the time. She's not feeling, she's thinking. And what she comes up with is this thing that escapes her from the devil, but now she lives in a cage of her own cunning. There's no growth, there's no development from this transformative insight. What could have been a deep engagement with the chthonic instead is forced into the template of the heroic. How clever and brave of Megan, right? To not just confront the devil, but outwit him. Right? But to me, and I'm biased, you know all my biases, in a mythopoetic sense, it is a failure. It is a failure. Right? We already know what it means to be like, if it's the first living thing and I cross it and the devil takes me, I already know what that means. The other stories have told us. What does it mean to be taken by the devil? 15 years of grief, no washing, full transformation, no more running away, you turn into a frog. The cauldron at the bottom of the falls says it all. The devil offers to bring you back to your body and nourishment, the cow, and all of that. But in return, you need to go with him down into the cauldron of transformation and grief. You trick him. Ha ha, good one, you got him. But you end up swindling your own self. You've had no change, you've had no healing, you've had nothing. And for some people, what I've just said, that you avoid all that, they're like, yeah, I'll take that. I'll take that deal. Screw the devil. I'm not even saying the devil is like evil or whatever. It's just like everything you're saying, Artie, I agree with. And given those two doors, deal in good faith with the devil, go down into that grief and come back up, transformed and this even more powerful, versus outwit and stay where I am right now. I'll take door number 2. Thank you very much, but I'll take door number 2 and I'll be on my way. My account is closed. Don't send me any more emails. And the point is, there's nothing wrong with that. If that is your choice, there's nothing wrong with that. You are the sovereign of your own world, right? But the point in telling a story like this is to show that there is a choice. You can make a choice. I'm not going to tell you what to choose, but there is a choice. And it's not just this allegorical, there's a good choice and a bad choice. It's like, no, there are at least 2 options, and neither of them is necessarily bad. It's just what you want. It's what you need, want, and desire. Put it that way. The bridge itself is a powerful symbol here. Here, the bridge is bridging you into your body. Now, we know this story, at least the Welsh version. The first version of the Welsh Devil's Bridge, the physical bridge, was built, I think, in the late 1600s, early 1700s. So this story would go along with that, right? So the late 1600s, early 1700s, this was right around the period, right, of the witch trials, the witch hunts in Europe and the Americas, New World. And there was this forced transformation of the crone, right, of the crone into this harmless little old lady, right, who does the right thing and tricks the devil and all the rest of it. And I'll talk more about that. But right here, right, this idea of bridging is a very sort of subtle symbol that is not even secretly inserted. It's like, it's the name of the story is the Devil's Bridge. But it's often lost. People don't get it. And the symbol of a bridge is to throw a bridge across a chasm, is to open up congress and connection and flow, traffic flow, between 2 previously unconnected realms, right? To bridge realms is a power that is the hallmark of the Hierophant, right? The high priest, like a hierophany is, a hiero is like divine, right? So a hierophany is an epiphany, right? A revelation, the phany of the hiero. So it's like divine revelation. And a hierophant, another word for hierophant is priest or pope. And a hierophant is the person who facilitates divine revelation. Okay. And bridging realms is traditionally one of the key superpowers of the hierophant. The Catholic Pope, right? The Catholic Pope, as an example, is referred to as the pontiff. And the word pontiff means bridger, like pontoon. The word pontiff means bridge, right? In Latin, pontus. And so the Pope is the hierophant who bridges the human and spiritual realms. He's how you, I mean, in the Catholic system anyway, he is the head of the middle management bureaucracy here on earth. And he is the bridge, right? You can't go directly to Christ to get into heaven. You have to go through the pontiff because he is the bridge from here to heaven. But to cross his bridge, you need to pay his toll, right? And that's fine. Unless you can find another way over it. And that's all fine. That's all fine. So he bridges between the human and the spirit realm. But what about the bridge between the human realm and the body realm, the chthonic realm, right? So the devil, and the devil, of course, is based on the Hindu Sanskrit word deva. And the word deva is the root of the word devil, but it's also the root of the word divine, deva into divine. Okay. so it's the sort of Christian overtones that have like turned devil into something actually negative. Because deva, divine, dervish, right? These are all not, they have no negative connotations. So the devil here is a different kind of pontiff, bridging you back to your body, right? And you want that, but you want no association with him. So you deal with him in bad faith. You swindle him, and you still use his bridge. You still use his bridge. Okay. So as I've said, the flavor of the story has some Christian overtones, because in pagan tradition, or because what is the significance of a story like this, where it's like the crone and the devil? This is not, the crone and the devil are like thick as thieves typically, right? In the pagan tradition. But I mean, when you imagine the crone and the devil with his like cloven hooves and like hind legs like a goat, right? The crone is the witchy woman, right? Dancing hand in hand with the devil, with this like goat satyr sort of devil, right? Midnight under a full moon around the campfire, and everybody's naked and like drinking wine and drinking magic potions, all the things Rome accused us of, right? Some sort of orgies and human sacrifice, all this horrible stuff, right? This is the Christian. So to see the crone and the devil in the daylight, right, haggling over the cost of this bridge, and the crone actually cheating the devil and making the devil go away. This is like, this Christian kind of fantasy of this Christian wet dream of like, we would love the crone and the devil to be completely estranged, right? And not in cahoots together. And the thing is, this devil figure, if he were really angry, right, and she cheated him, even though it was like to the letter of his whatever, he could still just snap his fingers and make the bridge disappear again. He could do that, right? But he doesn't. And even there, we don't give him credit. We're like, well, there's this unspoken gentleman's agreement between God and the devil where he has to honor his contracts and everything, which is why the devil doesn't cause trouble and still lets you cross his bridge. But that's total BS, right? If you can't have it both ways, if we truly believe the devil is like, the prince of darkness and evil and everything, then the devil is already the devil. He's burning in eternity. He's completely unredeemable, right? He's the lowest of the low, and there's no parole. There's no like re-release. So he has nothing to lose, right? So if he takes away the bridge in a huff, he's like, I'm going to take my ball and go home. I'm not going to play with you anymore. Then God could presumably punish him even more, but you can't, like, how much lower can he go? He's got nothing to lose. Right, so the point for me is that he could make the bridge disappear and still screw over the woman, right? And there would be nothing she could do about it. But he doesn't do that. He doesn't do that. Because he, like every other, like metaphorically, right? I'm not talking about an actual spiritual. I'm talking about the devil as a symbol of a part of your own inner self. Okay, just to pull this back from the woo-woo spiritual realm, just a metaphor, a mythopoetic image of a part of your own inner self that deals straightly with you, right? And who, even though you cheat him, does not screw you by taking the bridge away, because he loves you without condition, right? But we don't give him credit for leaving the bridge up. We praise the crone for screwing over the devil. Ha ha. Right? And we continue to use his bridge. We continue to use his bridge. So the profane then is suppressing the chthonic. We're suppressing the devil with this good and bad, sort of right and wrong, fear, threat, and control. We're suppressing the transformation. We're bridging over the transformation of the river. And the question is, what is the sacred way then? Right? What would have been the sacred way of going through some of this? And the sacred way would be, or the more sort of conciliatory way, right? The less black and white way, is to say, look, the devil is neither good or bad. The devil is a part of you. So if this monk with a cowl shows up and he's got a funny looking cloven foot and like hind legs that look like a goat's, what she could have said in a different mode, in a more sacred mode, right, would be, hey, your foot looks funny, right? And your knees look funny. And to say this to him out loud and to say, you know what, I think you're the devil. And he's like, you caught me. Am I in trouble? And you're like, no, you're not in trouble. But first of all, why are you hiding? Do I need to continue hiding you? What are you doing here? What can I do for you? Right? That's the key first question. Hello, how are you? What can I do for you? Right? You can ask him, what does he want? You can have curiosity instead of just sort of blinded sort of fear and running away. And what do you want from me? And he'll make his offer. He'll say, I want to throw the bridge for you. And you can say, well, what do you want in return? And he's like, well, I want the first living thing. And you could even ask, well, what does that mean you want the first living thing? Well, be more clear. What do you want? Do you want a cheesecake? Right? Do you want money? Do you want the cow? Do you want me? Right? And when you ask this part of you this question straightly, it will answer you straightly. And it'll be, look, I want you. I want you to come down with me, just like Never Wash and the devil taking the two princesses down for like grief processing transformation, right? I want to transform you. And you can say, well, that sounds scary. I don't want to do it. But anyway, tell me more. What happens down there? And he'll give you the whole story. And you can decide if you want to do that or not. And if you don't want to do that, that's okay. But you can send him away. And you don't ask him to build a bridge. You find some other way to get to your cow. Right? That would be it's not even sacred or profane. It's like, if you think about what would be the high integrity way of doing this, it would be what I just described. Right? Each side just speaks clearly. And what is an example of a high integrity interaction like this? It's the story we told last week, the Never Wash story, where the devil shows up. He's like, hey, do you want to, I've heard you say you want to find some service, some way to be useful. Well, I can put you to work. Right? And the soldier says, well, what do you want me to do? And what do I get in return? And he lays it out. And the soldier actually says, no, I don't want that. I want that and this other thing. So he's like bargaining. And the devil says, okay. And they both honor their bargain all the way through 14, 15 years. And everything turns out beautifully. All right. The devil to me represents a part of you, right? As much a part of you as your heart, lungs, or liver. And for me, any part of your own inner self that you stuff down, even if you are successful, is intrinsically a pyrrhic victory. What that means is pyrrhic victory is that you win the battle, but you lose the war. Right? You win the battle. It's like, I don't want my foot to like trick me into tripping over a stone again. So I'm going to shoot my foot. I'm going to cut it off. Ha ha. That's the last time my foot's ever going to give me trouble. And it's like, congratulations. That's a pyrrhic victory. Right? You won the battle with your foot, and now you can't walk anymore. Right? You've lost the war. You've lost the war. So, Gary, I don't know if you're still there. You can come on screen, but those are largely the notes I've had so far. And I think you noticed I added some things from our conversation, but I just wanted to bring you back and say, do you have any other additional thoughts as well? What do you think?
Well, something just came to me now when you were talking about, the whole flood of insight and the cauldron. The story fascinatingly talks about the exact reason in the way that she is kind of disconnected from the whole process of transformation. Is that right at the beginning of the story when the water is flooding into the cauldron, and she's standing right there, and the story says, well, if she had more time, she would have noticed how beautiful nature is and how awesome all of this is. But right now, she didn't have time for this. And she had other things on her mind. And I was
That's
thinking,
fascinating. That's very good.
I was thinking, how many times have I done this where I have this kind of flash of insight, or something comes to me and I push it away because, and this also resonates with what you said last week. I think one of the weeks we discussed where a classic way where we stuff things down, and men have a way that they do it and women have a particular way of doing it. And a classic way that women do it is to be so busy that we don't have time. And not having time is both something that we struggle with, but also at the same time something that gives us that shield to say that this is the reason why I stuff it down, and therefore it's okay.
I love that. That is something to do with,
and that's fine.
Yeah.
And that's okay. I think like someone on Facebook Live pointed out that it's all right to say that, right now I'm busy and I don't want to sit in grief, because I've probably, by the time I've come to the crone stage, I've already done all these things. And I've done a grief cycle once and it was horrible, and I don't have the time to go into grief right now. I'm sorry, but can we do this the next time? And I think that's okay, but it was just powerful for me to realize that this is what I do. I just kind of push it away because I don't have time.
I mean, there's a connection with that and the symbol of disembodiment itself, right? I mean, as we said, I think 3 or 4 sessions ago, one of the sort of mechanisms of embodiment is tempo and pacing.
Yeah.
Right. So when you're cut off from your cow, right? When you're cut off from your cow, you're typically going at a tempo that's so fast that the cow can't keep up. Right. So one of the things we talk about when we talk about embodiment is you slow down the pace, because it's body and mind, right? So mind can go into last week, next week, 3,000 years in the future, 3,000 years in the past. It can spin, through like 50 what if scenarios of what might happen in the next year. It can go through 50 years of what ifs in the next 5 minutes.
Right.
So the mind can go very fast, and the body can't. The body is only here. The body can't go last week. It can't go forward, into next week. And so if the two of them are going to coordinate, just logically, like, the physics of the thing, is that if they're going to sort of join pacing and harmonize, the mind has to slow down.
Right.
Not because the body's being a jerk. It's like the cow can't go as fast as the bird.
Right.
So if they're going to travel together, the bird can like sit on the cow and relax.
Right.
But the cow can't fly. Sorry, I'm not being obstinate. I just can't. Right? So the body can't go at the speed of the mind. So if the mind and body are going to be integrated, the mind has to slow down. So right at the beginning, there's a cauldron, which is a huge giveaway, right? And before we even see the cow, and then we see the cow, and then we see like she's looking at the water, and her mind is going too quickly for her to be able to like enjoy stuff. And it's not that the cow causes her to be like this or this causes her. She is disembodied, and all these, it's like an archetype. She's disembodied, and it throws the reflection of the cow, and it throws the reflection of her not even being able to enjoy nature.
Yeah.
Because your mind is moving too quickly.
Right.
Right. You're like walking on the hiking trail, but you're on a conference call. So your head is on like, what's Q4 going to look like in terms of revenue? And you pass by snakes and, breaching whales and rainbows. But you got some fresh air into your life, so it's okay.
Yeah.
So I totally feel that when you say that.
Yeah, and then it was incredible when, at the point the story says she thought and thought and thought, and this is when she was thinking of a plan on how to outwit the devil. She thought so much that she had a headache, and that was just so. Yeah, I mean, it's powerful
until this part of her body was in pain.
Yeah, and I could kind of relate to that because I mean, this that I struggle with migraine, right, a lot, and over the years that's gone down considerably. But when I was healing that part of the thing, and the answer that came to me when I sat down with it and what should I do about this is the same thing. It's that I need to shift myself into a place of emotion and connect with emotion and not with thoughts, right? And it just kind of resonated in the story so much about her thinking so much that her head ached while there is this waterfall and cauldron full of water that's right next to her, and then she doesn't pay attention to it, and she's thinking so much that her head aches. It's just so explicitly put that I'm like, okay, totally. Yeah, message taken. I think I know what you're trying to tell me.
It kind of reminds me of this thing I heard Alan Watts say one time in this old talk of his. And he was like, yeah, I think it was something about the present moment and going too fast in our modern world or the nature of worry. But the image I remember he gave was, it's Monday morning and you wake up and you're in your bed, you're warm, you're snuggled in your blankets. And then under your blankets, you open your eyes and you're like, oh my gosh, it's Monday morning and I'm going to have to do this. I'm going to have to do that. And then on Tuesday, I have this deadline and all this stuff is happening. I have to get up and get in my car and do my commute. And it's like you work yourself into a frenzy when in reality, you're lying in your bed, warm and comfortable. And you fly over all of that. Your body's still in bed. Your mind's flying forward 24, 48 hours and coming back and cattle prodding the body, right? And and I guess part of it is that, again, I'll circle back to something I said in the beginning. If you do this, and we all do, that's okay. I'm not telling you to not do it like this. I'm not telling you to go embrace the devil all of a sudden, the devil in you. I'm saying this is, symbolically, what the story is telling us is that this mythopoetic train wreck of a mistransformation is not an allegorical warning. It is a symbol of an archetype that is valid and exists. We do deal falsely with these parts of ourselves. We do stuff them down. We do go too far with cleverness, and we do avoid transformation, right? And then when you finally go through the grief and you do this, you realize, oh my gosh, there were 3 other points in my life before this where I could have, and I avoided it. Through drinking, through getting a new job and needing to rush off, through being too busy, through receiving this award, right? And I was distracted. And A, that's okay, that's normal, that happens to everyone. And B, when you realize that, you will grieve that too. And that's another log that you're going to throw on the fire. It's like you're burning the fire anyway. What's one more thing to grieve? Right, so it's not 15 years, it's 16 years of grief. It's like, we've been fine. We don't even notice that we're never watched. We're 14 years into it. We are a frog. We don't notice the fact that our skin is slimy and we eat flies now. We don't even notice. It's fine. It's fine.
Yeah.
What else?
So on that note, would you want to recommend an exercise?
Okay, let's do the exercise. All right. Okay, so the exercise I'm thinking about here, and I hope this story was interesting, potentially even helpful, is when you have time this week, sitting down for 5 or 10 minutes alone in your car after you've arrived at somewhere, or at home if you have alone time at home, with a pen and paper, only if you want, no pressure, only if you want. Remember, sacred space, no expectation of participation, only if you want. A question that might be interesting to ask is, what pyrrhic victory are you fighting within your own self and winning, if any? Right? What pyrrhic victory are you claiming and achieving in your own self, if any? In other words, it's a battle that you win, but it costs you the larger picture of the war. And the battle could be self-discipline. Right? I'm very disciplined. I always do this routine. Or being righteous. I'm in the right and the other side is wrong. Or being efficient, or prestigious, or more clever than the next person. Right? Or more clever. Oh, it took him years to get to this level of spiritual development, and it only took me this much time because I was more clever. Okay. So, in other words, a battle where you win the battle, but you lose the larger prize somehow of, I don't know what, happiness or contentment or a deeper life purpose or bliss. Right? So what pyrrhic victory are you fighting and winning within your own self, if any? And then what is the devil, quote unquote devil, within you, which you are outwitting, but in the process avoiding deeper reconciliation with your inner self, avoiding deeper healing, right? A classic example would be, any of these things I've already mentioned, but also something around body image, right? Where like I do all these things to like have this perfect body image. So I win the battle. Congratulations, you've lost those 20 pounds, right? And you look great. But then I'm not saying this is always true, but you could imagine the scenario where that same person then says, yeah, but now I'm attracting, first of all, I'm not happy. I'm like hungry all the time and I'm not healthy as I could be. Number two, I'm reinforcing this idea of I'm only loved conditionally if I look a certain way. And then three, I'm like attracting people who are attracted to my body, hooray, but they're attracted to me and I suspect only for my body, which doesn't feel comfortable at all. So you've won the battle of like getting your body to look a certain way, but is it a pyrrhic victory, right? Is it a pyrrhic victory? And the point is, I don't know, right? And this is just an interesting question to ask, and only if you want to, and only if you want to. Or it could be other, the body is often a devil that is like whipped, and then we use the bridge of the body anyway, right? Where it's like you're doing all these like Ironman triathlons and like working out and looking great and everything, and you're healthy technically, right? But you're not able to like express yourself in the right way. You have a watch that like tracks everything, and you're like hacking your life and health and wellness and everything, but something else is still missing because you still, you don't feel full joy and freedom of expression in your body, Like you can run 5 miles without breaking a sweat, but you would never dance, right? And again, I'm not saying any of these is right or wrong. These are just interesting questions potentially to ask if you like. So anyway, the telltale sign that you're in a pyrrhic victory with yourself is that you win the battle, but you are still somehow not happy. You still feel that emptiness, that you still don't have that feeling of full satisfaction, right? You've put everything in the pot, you're cooking it, you follow the recipe, and you're tasting it. It's like there's still something missing, And maybe you just like shut up and eat it anyway. But after a while, that gets old, right? After 30 years of that, you're like, I really do want to figure out what the missing element here is. So you win the battle, but you're still not happy. You get the promotion, but you're still not happy because maybe you're in the wrong job, maybe you're in the wrong industry. You marry the right person who checks all the boxes, right? You do all the things of the proper template, the right prestige, the right car, the right everything, but somehow you're still not happy. right? And right there, that's when you're cut off from your cow. And right there is the crossroads, the point at which you could say, what is really going on here? Who is this standing next to me with the funny foot? Let me talk to him and have a deep one-on-one good faith conversation with him. Or do I trick the devil? I get him to throw the bridge, and I ask myself, I've done all these things. I've won the battle, but I've lost the war. I'm still not happy, right? I'm doing the right template. I'm getting the promotion. I'm still not happy. I'm still anxious and not sleeping. And the clever way through is to not go back and figure out where you kind of went wrong in the software code. The clever thing is just to patch it on the end, where you say, well, what pill can I now take to basically make all this anxiety just brute force go away? Okay. And my point here in symbol mode, not allegory mode, is to say, I'm not saying there's a right or wrong answer there, but I'm saying that that is the crossroads, and you choose. You choose whatever is best for you at that time. So that's it. That's the one sort of little thought experiment exercise I came up with that was brought on for me by this story. And I invite you to give it a try as well on your own this week. Only if you want. All right. Okay, so that's what we've got. That's what we have for this session. And now I will go ahead and close the session. So our next session is same time next Sunday. It's free, open to the public, open to everyone. Feel free to invite others, only if you want. And you have in the Crowdcast, you should have a green call to action button that allows you to like jump forward and sign up for the next session. And then in the Facebook, you should have the text to join the next session. Let me just make sure you have it. Not sure if it's showing up. I'm going to dump it in the comments there. So that's the link to join the next session. Sorry about this. And then Facebook, I'll dump it in the comments there as well. All right, so that's where you can sign up for the next session. And now I will go ahead and close the session. So I hereby close this session of our shared sacred space. Thank you for holding this space with me and with us, and for sharing the nourishment, the emotional nourishment, the spiritual nourishment of this shared sacred space with us. I give you my blessing. Go in peace, bestowed with blessing, free of fear, free of threat, and the undue control of others. Thank you so much. Have a great weekend, have a great week, and I will see you all in the next session. Thank you. Thank you.